Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. May the Lord cause his countenance to shine on you and be gracious unto you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord lift up his countenance unto you and give you peace. It was dramatic every time. On Shabbat and High Holy Days, the rabbi would walk from the lectern over to the grand metal doors from the old Newark sanctuary, doors that soared up toward the peak of the wood and brick mid-century modern building. He would stand on the bima atop the grand staircase in front of the ark. Dressed in his robe, he'd raise his hands so that the palms faced the congregation and offer the priestly benediction. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May the Lord bless you and keep you. It wasn't exactly the voice of God, though some have referred to it as such, especially since one of my childhood rabbis was my father. But it was dramatic, nevertheless. It was dramatic to hear those words of the priestly benediction called out in a large, resounding voice, powerfully assertive and demanding. Years later, I became a parent, and those great formal words of the bima, of the sanctuary of my childhood, entered the dining room of my home, the very small dining room. My children, blessed with these words almost every Shabbat of their lives, hear them as tradition. It's something their dad and I do. Unfortunately, they don't recall their grandfather speaking these words eloquently and dramatically, though he did bless each of them with great emotion when they were named in this synagogue. For them, it's informal and comfortable. For me, as I bless them, I still hear Dad's voice. I hear the big drama. I see him in the large sanctuary. Even as I dance around the table, trying to get my two hands on three children's heads for relatively equal amounts of time as I chant and translate the blessing. While I always carry this blessing with me, I've been thinking a lot about it lately. It has a rich history. Once the purview of the priests of the ancient temple of Jerusalem, in our Reform context, we hear these words frequently. At baby namings, when we bless our children at the Shabbat table, at weddings, b'nai mitzvah, and in our High Holy Day liturgy. I have, over the years, even spoken the words to patients who were gravely ill, trying to invoke that feeling of peace and connection. The threefold blessing is deceptively simple. May God bless us and keep us. May God shine the divine face upon us and be gracious. And may God lift up the divine face and grant us peace. 3 pretty simple sentences. And if you unpack those sentences, here's what you see. The first line, the commentators say, asks for material well-being. The second line literally says, God, show your face our direction. Shine on us. Give us the light of your presence and be gracious. Commentaries say this is a request for wisdom, for insight, for knowledge, and for favor in another's eyes. That third line says, God, turn your face to us and give us peace. The commentators add to that and say it also means give us the benefit of the doubt, forgive us. So think about the blessing. It's paradoxically timely. Why? Well, 2 of those 3 simple lines talk about God's face, saying, turn your face to us. Look at us. Pay attention to us. Be good to us. What an interesting request, precisely when we can barely see one another's faces. Look at us. Here we are in daily pursuits. We're trying to read facial expressions, look for comfort, look for fondness, find knowing expressions, and frankly, we want to see anything, any emotion we can over those masks. We just want to see real faces. So how can we conceptualize God's face when we can't see the faces of one another? A Hasidic commentary teaches that we can see God, ironically perhaps, when we do see human faces, when we do look to one another. Rabbi Meir Horowitz of Zhikov explains in this commentary a couple hundred years ago that the human face is like the form of the Hebrew letter Aleph. The Aleph has one long central line and a small one on either side, sort of like that. Not unlike our nose and our eyes, a slightly different positioning if you want to get technical. Each of us, this commentator says, has that Aleph on our faces. And he equates that Aleph with God through some mystical gematria or mathematics. In other words, we all have the image of God right on our faces. Seeing God in the features of each face is the reminder that God created each of us in the divine image. Think about that. God is in each of our faces, in our facial features. Fair enough. We can see God in human faces, we're taught. But what does that mean today in this masked era? Let's take a little bit of a lesson from a holiday that is just the opposite of Yom Kippur. Purim. Purim, of course, is the holiday on which we're supposed to dress up and put masks on. The Hebrew for Yom Kippur is Yom HaKippurim, which is often played with as if it is the day, Yom, that is k, like Purim or Purim. Yom Kippur like Purim? The two holidays really could not be more different, it seems, but maybe not. As Israeli educator Ilan Izrahi posits, maybe they're more alike than they look. He asks, how can we compare a day of atonement and fasting to a day that commands us to dress up and drink? One similarity is that on both days we disconnect ourselves from reality. On Yom Kippur we separate ourselves from material and bodily constraints, and on Purim we put our brains on hold and allow full body pleasure. In both cases, as Rahi writes, we have an out-of-body or an out-of-soul experience that enables us to reflect on fundamental existential questions regarding personal and collective identity in our world and in our communities, Jewish and secular. An out-of-soul experience, an out-of-body experience? I dare say we've had a great many of both in the past 6 months. Some would say that's all we've had. We've asked deep, challenging questions about life and death, priorities and values. So where then do we come out this Yom Kippur? Our answer, I would suggest, lies in another takeaway from that Purim-Yom Kippur comparison. As different as the two holidays are, they both have a deeply important similarity. Both days hold a message of social responsibility. On Purim, we are obliged to give gifts to the poor, and on Yom Kippur, we are told that without forgiveness from fellow humans, we will not be exempt from ultimate punishment. In short, Purim and Yom Kippur, as Rahi writes, are two sides of the same coin. It is, I believe, in this message and in the reality of social responsibility that we do find God, and find God in the faces of one another, even with our masks on. A powerful Talmudic text teaches just how that might be in our actions. Consider the text. Talmud says, just as God clothed the naked, so shall you clothe the naked. Just as God visited the sick, so you should visit the sick. Just as God buried the dead, so you should bury the dead. And just as God comforts the grieving, so you too comfort the grieving. In short, we are to emulate God, God's actions really, with our actions. And as my teacher, Rabbi Jonathan Slater, explains, a further Hasidic commentary, Mivasar Tzedek, teaches that God appears just when we naturally and spontaneously turn toward one another for the sake of justice and compassion. In other words, in the words of that Talmudic text, when we clothe the naked, feed the hungry et al., God appears. Social responsibility, justice, and compassion. We know this is our Jewish mission, the mission that the prophets taught and that we read and learn and understand throughout the year. And we have certainly been earth-shakingly reawakened to the needs of our world in these tumultuous recent days, these days of virus, racial injustice, and forest fires, storms, protests, violence, and economic inequity. Turning to act with justice and compassion, these are clearly themes of Yom Kippur. They are powerfully expressed in the Haftarah of Isaiah we'll hear tomorrow, and in the Torah of Kedoshim we will also read tomorrow. We are challenged, commanded really, to get outside of our personal bubbles, to recognize, hear, and meet the needs of all in our community, to disrupt what we always thought we knew, to disrupt our understandings and learn more, understand more, take nothing for granted, and to treat everyone justly, all of us being created in God's image. Each of us with that aleph on our faces. No matter our place, no matter our age, no matter our gender, no matter our roots, no matter our birthplace, no matter our station in life, each of us has God on our faces. Each of us must be treated as if we are created in God's image. So today and tomorrow, this Yom Kippur and beyond, let us keep our physical masks on for health and safety when we are with others. And let us look over and beyond the masks, too. Let us look to see God in the faces of others. Let us look to see God when we emulate God in our deeds, when we reach out with kindness, compassion, and justice, when we give the benefit of the doubt, when we seek peace. Let us remember that even as we ask God to turn to us, to look to us, to shine God's light, turn God's face toward us, be good to us and see us, we need to emulate that action too. We need to turn our faces, gracious faces, compassionate faces, to one another too. In this way, we can see God in the face of the other, even with a mask on. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yaher Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. May God bless us and keep us. May God's face shine on us and be gracious unto us. May God's face lift upon us, turn to us, and grant us peace and wholeness. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will.